Mess it up too bad.
Not too bad. That's right.
I'll let you know when it gives us a countdown. All right, we are officially live on Facebook. Technology is pretty dang awesome. That took me a couple minutes to get us set up, but we're rolling. So we get the opportunity to be here with, everyone knows you already, the wonderful Anna Winters. Thanks for giving me some of your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. This will be fun.
This is where you tell me like I had nothing better to do, so I get to spend it with me this afternoon.
I was so excited to spend it with you today, Marcus, because there's actually exciting stuff that I feel like we can go over today.
Awesome. Well, one of the things you and I have in common is our love for travel.
Right.
I know every time we end up sitting by each other at a local dinner or event, we end up talking about travel because we're both passionate about it. What is your favorite location you've ever traveled to?
I know it just immediately. Cinque Terre, Italy.
Oh,
in fact, I've probably gone there twice now.
Okay.
And I can't wait to go back.
Fun. Is that southern Italy or northern Italy?
It is really close to Florence and it's above Rome.
Okay.
So it's going to be kind of northern. I don't know if it's more northern or if it's kind of central, I guess.
Okay.
But it's 5 little towns on a cliff.
Oh, fun.
It's just beautiful.
Super fun. That's one thing it took me a minute to figure out, but one of the things we like to do now when we're traveling to like a bigger city, it sounds like Rome's the closest city, big city, is we like to go see the big city with the big tourist pieces, but then we try to stay in that area and say, okay, well, let's go find out where do the local people from Rome go to vacate, right? All the little towns along the way, which those tend to be a lot of fun, unless you get robbed like I did this last time, but that's a whole nother story. So here we are on our Facebook page with all of our wonderful agents today. And what is the most pressing issue inside your business right now? I know you always provide incredible customer service. Your clients love you. The agents in our office love you. But as a real estate professional, we're always trying to get better, and we're always identifying something in our business that needs to get better. What is that for you right now?
So I think actually what inspired me was my husband. He's been starting this geothermal and heating and air conditioning business. And he's been doing amazingly with all of his finances and getting it set up right. And I've been in the business 21 years and I haven't done that.
Yeah.
It's like, here's my personal card and it's also for my business when I pay for things.
Yeah.
And so I just thought I'm going to crack open the MREA book again and get down to the basics again and get that finally in place.
Beautiful. I love it. Number one, thanks for being vulnerable and sharing that with us. And I'll also tell you, you're not in that boat by yourself. It tends to be, even though it's only one of the 4 models in the MREA, the budget model, it tends to be the one for some reason that people fight the most.
Right.
So interesting.
I am totally guilty of that.
The funny thing is if I asked any agent, do you love net income? They all say yes. But if I ask everyone how they feel about the word budget, they're all, like, it just feels like an ugly word for most people, right?
If you would have said it to me probably a few weeks ago, I probably would have ran. I'd be like, yeah, Marcus, I'm out.
I have no desire to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's important though, because a lot of us are building our businesses off of gross commission income, and we're gauging our success off of gross commission income. And honestly, I think that's a fair measure for newer people to the business, because a lot of them, they can make more money than they've ever made in our business. But I think the thing you and I can both agree on is we don't do what we do for the total amount of money we can make, but it's about serving the client. And then what do we net? Because we can't affect our life with the gross income. We affect our life and the people we love's lives with what we get a net, right? What is actually the amount of money we get to spend? And I think if we change, and we all know the bold law, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I think part of this conversation really should be around how do we change the way we look at the budget model?
I don't know. If you've got a tip for me that makes it so it's more pleasant.
'Cause how many years have you been selling real estate now?
21.
21.
Mhm. I've got I've got the 33 touchdown. I've got my top 50 down. I've got all that stuff down. So now I feel like to really, and I feel like my business is growing year after year. So I think I'm at that point that it's like, if I want to take myself to the next level, this is something I have to do.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think it's important for everyone to understand like the next level, like generally speaking, when you're saying, I want to get to the next level, that can mean one of two things for people, right? It's, I want to do more production, or I want to make more money, right? I want to create more money for myself. And that doesn't always equate to doing more transactions, right?
Right.
That's where the budget model comes into play, is saying, okay, well, if I'm out of money to spend and I closed, let's say 25 units last year and I'm out of money to spend, our natural inclination is I just need to sell more. Instead of saying, can I sell the same amount of units and net more money at the end of the year? So I would say if you and I sat down and you asked me the question, how do I change the way I look at the budget model? The first thing I would say is, you'd think I would dive into the numbers, which is that's an instant way to turn anyone off.
Right.
But if I was coaching you on it, I would actually push the budget model off the conversation for a minute and go back to your why. Like, why is it you do what you do? So in a couple of sentences, why is it that you choose to run a real estate business? Like, what is your why around your business?
I think it comes down to, and I think I realized this when my kids were playing baseball one time. I was like, one time my kid got hit with a ball, like an amazing amount of times in the face. I mean, it was like ridiculous how many times he got hit. And then there was a couple other things, and I just realized, they'd keep on getting afraid, or they would make an excuse why they didn't want to play better. And also I thought, well, how am I living like that? How am I being an example? And so, they're afraid, or they're letting excuses get in their way of being their best. And I thought, am I showing them that? And so that is one of the things that probably is my big why, is to be an example, not only to my kids, but my nieces and nephews are so important to me. Yeah. And it's to be an example to them to, get past my fears, get past my excuses. Not always easy, but I work on it daily.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's always interesting to me to see how people set goals around being in business, right? We see people come into business that are like, look, if I don't make money, my kids aren't going to eat, right? They're the sole income earner, and that is their driver. For other people, it's like, that's not my driver. My kids have food. We have another income, but it's about, what am I teaching my kids about setting goals and achieving things in life, right? And it doesn't make one goal better than the other. But one of the things I would say is, what I heard you say there is, I want to be an example to my kids, someday my kids, right? Yes. Or those around me that are like, hey, look, I set goals and I achieve them, and I do good with the money that I make achieving
Absolutely.
them, right? So one of the things that I would if we had more time and we were going to flesh this out, I would really drive down to, like, how does you making more money affect your kids, or the example around those? Because if I asked you what your goals are for your real estate goals are for 2020, what would those goals be? Are they built around a gross income? Are they built around units? What does that look like for you?
They're mostly done by, well, I have to say something, because this is also, I had a really rough time last year when I was done with my year.
Yeah.
I looked at my goals, and I didn't hit them. And I had a moment of being really mad at myself, really angry. And so, in fact, I was going through coaching at the time, and it took me a little bit to process it all, because I don't think I've ever been so angry at myself for it.
Yeah.
It was surprising, actually. So some of my goals have been postponed, but I did want to do, I wanted to double my deals, because I know that's what we talked about on the ALC. Yeah. So I'm going to double my deals. So that was 36 deals.
Awesome.
All of a sudden, we changed it twice with my coaching. So now all of a sudden I'm going backwards. It was 40 deals.
Yeah. Awesome. 40, I mean, that's a huge
Yeah.
number of deals as a solo agent, which is awesome. So one of the things that again I would look at is if you're saying, hey, this is what I want to focus on out of the 4 models, right? You've worked backwards in the economic model. You've got your database put together. You know who your top leads are. You've got them organized. From a budget model, one of the things I would say is let's get more clarity on what do the 40 deals produce in a net income, and then let's focus on the net income goal, and then we're going to create a cadence around tracking it every month, right? Because that's where most people wait till the end of the year and they're like, how much money did I end up making? Or they know every month how much gross income they made, but they don't know how much ended up in their pockets, if that makes sense. So I know you've been to a couple of my classes before, and before we started this, one of the things you had mentioned is the series I have online about that MREA book broken down into segments and around that budget model. From your perspective, what is the number one thing that's kept you from embracing the budget model in the past?
Probably, because to me, I think it's just the same thing that we worry about doing too much business because we won't have enough time. I think in some ways, you think about if I do a budget, then will I be able to have fun?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's probably what gets in my way. Is I'm worried it's going to put me in another quarantine, a new level.
Yeah.
Of quarantine.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of us overcomplicate it too, right? And it's so particularly this one, I think it's really easy to complicate of like, oh man, well, I've got to go get QuickBooks. Then I got to pay someone to train me how to do that. Then I got to link it to my bank accounts. And then I've got to figure out these things. And then we become, just that sentence right there overwhelms most people to be like, there's no way I'm doing that. I would say the best way to approach it is simplicity, right? You can get as detailed as you want over time. But one of the biggest things that I would work on in approaching and adopting the budget model is keeping it as simple as possible. I run all of my business expenses on this credit card and out of this checking account. And I got my multi-year trend report that shows me how much money I made. And at the end of every month, it's my gross commission income was X, pull out my credit card statement, minus these, get my checking statement out, minus that. What's my net income? Like, I keep it as simple as possible. Then you'll just at least start saying like, oh man, well, I had a 40% net profit margin or a 40% net profit margin or whatever it is. But then I think that will, for most agents, I think that creates some you start getting curious of like, well, let me break that down a little bit more. Of the 20% expenses, how much of that was cost of sales versus an expense, right?
Right.
And then it's easy to start building on that. So I would say, and I think a lot of us go too complex too quick and don't keep it simple. So one of the things I'm going to do, I'll send you a copy of just like a really simple spreadsheet that I generally recommend people starting with on this. It's that easy. It's just like, it tells you what was your gross income this month. Boom. Then it says breaks your expenses into 4 or 5 simple categories. You can get your credit card statement out in your checking account, put that in, and then it kicks out a net income and it automatically calculates what your net income percentage was as a percentage of your gross income. And I think if you committed to do that for a couple months, your curiosity would get the best of you, where you're like, well, if I wanted to affect that, let me dig in a little bit more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think like as I go through the MRE book, I also wanted to go through some of your videos that you have on your, I can't remember the Facebook page that's yours. You have the Suave Agent.
Oh, I like the Suave Agent better than Savvy Agent. Savvy, SAVVY Agent. Yeah.
But I was planning on going through the MRE a book and then also doing maybe some of those videos through those parts that I felt like I needed a little extra.
Yeah.
And then make sure I have my finances. I'm going to get a couple other things in place. Like I think my value prop needs to be a little updated or even figured out a little bit better, because I have kind of a half-assed one, I guess. And so I think during these times we need to reevaluate that stuff and say, is there something else I need to be providing in the, you know, and with everything that's going on in the world. So those are my goals this year, is to really kind of nail more of that down, so that if I'm in an environment where I'm with agents that treat their business like a business, I can actually mastermind with them and have, you know, something to participate in the
Yeah.
conversation with.
Love that. And I think just the last couple sentences too, I think you're spot on. The most critical thing right now is the world has changed, right?
Mhm.
I mean, now there's some things that are feeling like they're going back to some element of normalcy in some regards, not in
Mhm.
everything, obviously, but the world has changed. And for you to think through, like, okay, well, I have to reanalyze my value proposition. I have to reanalyze what my client needs are. I mean, the agents that are ignoring that right now, I think are being delusional. Like, it's time to analyze your business from top to bottom, not to the extent of paralyzing yourself of like, this is too overwhelming, I can't do this. But it's just this process of don't stop working, but set aside time every day to be thinking like, okay, well, what do my clients really need right now? Okay, well, if my clients need this and this is what I've offered historically, does that still fix the problem for them? If it doesn't, how would I change this? And they're not huge changes. Like, don't throw everything out that you had before, but it's how do I tweak this in a way that now matches the needs of the client, right? So I think that's brilliant that you're looking at that right now. So
yes, so of course it's it's all about relationships. So I want to make sure that I mean, I don't just build a business relationship, that I build a long-lasting relationship with my clients.
And more important now than ever, I think, to build that relationship and solidify that relationship.
Right.
I mean, one last thing I'd say that kind of ties that relationship piece together with the budget model, which is what we talked a little bit about, is if you've been watching Gary Keller's approach to the shift of the market and some of the advice he's giving, I mean, and it really goes back to the Shift book. One of the first things he talks about is remargining your expenses, right? When the truth is the last couple of years, the market's been so good and people were without being overly purposeful, they were selling real estate, right?
Right.
We've let our expenses get too fat, right? And I'm guilty of it too, right? Every once in a while you're looking at your credit card statement and you're like, man, I thought I canceled this like 6 months ago. And I'm still getting charged for it, right? Prosperity has kept our expenses just getting a little bit fatter, almost imperceptibly every month. Well, one of the first things we need to do is remargin our expenses of how do I maximize my highest dollar productive activity, which is for you is building that relationship with your people, negotiating contracts, all those things. How do I maximize that, get rid of the excess, and then come back to that point? And then the exercise we talked about getting better at your P&L and looking at your profit and loss statement is then it's going to expand that to say, okay, well, this is what I do really well. Am I getting the return on the dollars that I am spending?
Right.
So I think that's a really timely message from Gary Keller right now around that. So if we're gonna wrap up, because you know me, I could go down this road for an hour, but I do want to ask this question: favorite business book of all time?
Okay, business book, I think is it's going to be the same, probably the Think and Grow Rich, but I also like the emotional intelligence. I think sometimes when we can understand, we don't have to agree, but we actually understand where somebody's coming from, you know, and you can hear different points of views, you can find solutions in that. So I feel like it's really important right now that we practice that.
I wish I would have heard you say that about 20 years ago when I was starting my career. It honestly, to throw myself under the bus, it took me like probably 5 to 8 years before I understood that sales is not about me selling something. It's about me understanding them and their point of view and their need and seeing if I have a solution for them. And I look back at it now, and I was a very aggressive salesperson of like, and I'd walk out of a sales meeting that I thought I crushed. Be like, what's wrong with them? they didn't want to fight with me, right? And then now I look back at it, I'm like embarrassed. But I think that's critical, and it's a skill set to learn that. So well
It
said.
irritates some people when I do it, but it's honestly, in fact, I think one of my really good friends, in my birthday wish on Facebook in December, that was one of the things. She's like, sometimes you see the other point and it irritates the crap out of me, but it's mostly, I don't necessarily always agree with it, but I try and see it because I feel like the solution is somewhere in that.
Yes.
Without getting too emotional about it.
Yeah. All right. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
So if you had to give advice to agents in our office right now, if you had one piece of advice right now, what would it be?
I would really jump on one of the things I feel like really has helped me is like when you do the masterminds with the MREA, I would do that, go on group coaching that they have on the Keller Williams side. I've done a lot of those through my career, even at times when I'm part-time.
Yeah.
When I was an agent, I did not want to not be in the know, even if I'm part-time. So I've always taken opportunity to take classes. And then I believe we have a great productivity coach, Chris, in our office. I would do productivity coaching. If you have to get a life coach, I think all those things are very beneficial.
Yeah, it's time to lean in, right? If you want to make a career out of this, it's time to lean in. And I mean, as you know, we're always open to suggestions and advice on we want to bring value to the table that you guys as agents say, yes, that is value, right? If we're ever bringing something that you don't feel like is value, we want to hear it. But I think that's well said. So to wrap up, I just want to tell you how proud I am to be in business with you.
Well, thanks, Marcus. I'm proud to be in business with you too.
Thanks. It really is.
I'm so excited to be at Keller Williams. I keep saying this because I know that Gary Keller is fighting for our industry so much right now, and I cannot figure out why any other agent wouldn't want to be a part of Keller Williams because of that.
Amen to that. All right. Well, so grateful for you. If any of you have questions for Shauna, she's always available. I don't dare give out your cell phone number without your permission, but track her down. She's always willing to help, and a phenomenal leader in our office. Thanks again for sharing some of your time and wisdom with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marcus.
Talk to you soon.
Mm-hmm.